Welcome, ladies and gents. We've had the Mexican Grand Prix, and what a race we got there. I mean, it had action all the way through that race, and we got the split strategy, some holding on for the one, the two-stop looked like the better strategy in the end. Absolutely brilliant to see that kind of racing. That's exactly what we want, the tyres to work, the actual two steps in the hard from Pirelli actually work this weekend. But now it's that time where I go through and rate each and every one of the drivers, how they got on over the whole weekend, and my predictions review. Let's get to it. And we start as ever with the race winner, Lando Norris. The absolute perfect weekend for him. Last weekend it was Max Verstappen. This one is Lando Norris, and boy, he couldn't have asked for a better race than he could ever imagined. Who'd have thought? He's come in 14 points behind his teammate in the championship, and to walk away with the lead. He had a brilliant lap for qualifying, 0.6 of a second faster than Oscar Piastri, and in the race he had the perfect start, kept out of the mess at turn 1 and was comfortable from there on. I mean, that's all he had to do this race, was actually just make sure that he got into turn 1 first. He did that, managed that really, really well, and from there on he was absolutely miles away. 30 seconds he won the race by. Absolutely flawless this weekend. He couldn't have asked for anything better. And can someone explain what the booing was all about? Have I completely missed that? Why were all the fans booing him? Any comments in the section below will be massively appreciated, because I genuinely don't understand that one, unless he said something against the Mexican people, or what's going on. Are they just not happy with the papaya rules? Anyone's guess by the looks of it, but for Lando Norris, it was absolutely brilliant. He leads the championship now, and can he continue this sort of form that he's built up over the last few races? And now the pressure is on him. He leads. Can he handle the pressure? Oscar's not managed to do that in the last 4. No podiums for him. And Lando Norris has taken full advantage of that. I've given him, no surprise, a 10 out of 10. Second place man, Charles Leclerc, started in second with a brilliant qualifying lap. Took me by surprise, Ferrari being that good around here. They have historically gone well around Mexico, but their form, just, you couldn't you'd be surprised with anything coming from the Ferraris. But it was a really good race for him. Lucky to get away with a penalty. Had it not been his teammate, he did what he did at turn 1 on, and effectively gained the advantage. Lewis Hamilton had the inside line. Charles Leclerc was effectively behind Lewis Hamilton, cut the grass and kept second place. And no penalty. It wasn't even investigated by the stewards, really. So unless, like they say, when it's team on team, the stewards tend to stay away from that. And lap 1, turn 1 is the stewards do give a little bit of leniency to the drivers on that. But Charles Leclerc looked like he actually really got away with that one there at turn 1, because he just blatantly cut it and kept second place to Lewis Hamilton. And from there on, he didn't quite have the pace of Lando Norris, but he built up a comfortable gap of about 12 seconds, probably thanks to his teammate actually behind, who, you know, with his battles with Max Verstappen and all that, sort of just let Charles Leclerc build that gap up. And he needed every second of that gap when it came towards the end of the season, because Max Verstappen was hunting him down. And another lap or two, I think Charles Leclerc would have been a sitting duck. But he did everything that he needed to do. I thought he drove a brilliant race. I thought he would struggle to hold on to that second place when Max Verstappen was hunting him down. Obviously, the VSC helped him out on that one. But I thought it was a brilliant weekend from Charles Leclerc. A 9 out of 10 for me. Third place man, Max Verstappen, and he was in the races all from the start. He's just sort of 0 F's given about his championship, really. Lap 1, turn 1, he locked up. He was on the actual curbs trying to brake and locked up. And then just basically cut the whole of turn 1 and 2, just completely gave that a miss. Slowed down to let Lewis Hamilton pass, much to George Russell's irk. He was absolutely annoyed with that one. I mean, he just didn't stop ranting on the radio about Max getting the penalty for that turn 1. I can completely understand that. And then he had that ding-dong battle with Lewis Hamilton, which we didn't really quite get to see properly on the television. Again, the TV editing has been absolutely awful for the last couple of Grand Prix. It got better in Austin, but they missed track action again when it was coming to the front. And what better than Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton going wheel to wheel? I mean, that resulted in the Lewis Hamilton penalty, but it meant Max Verstappen dropped a couple of places. Ollie Berman squeezed through. George Russell got shafted the most again by Max Verstappen going off because he got passed by Berman and Antonelli. And couldn't make any headway there, but Max did what he did. Then pit, went really long on the mediums, pit and came out P8, but he had that 13-lap tyre advantage, and he made 8 seconds up to Lewis Hamilton that he came out behind him in no time, and was hunting down Charles Leclerc for that P2. And the VSC cost him that chance, and us that chance for that last battle on the last lap. He just turned around and said it was racing, these things happen, and he was actually really just surprised to be on the podium. He didn't think that would be possible, which was I'd had him to go in and do really well this weekend, but surprisingly that they were as bad as they were. But Max Verstappen pulled it off with a brilliant second stint on that soft tyre, and now just 36 points behind Lando Norris, and he is very much in this championship with 4 to go with 2 sprint races. He's given himself a chance. He's still in with a fight, and I would still potentially back him now that he's just hunting down Lando Norris. I've given him an 8 out of 10 though for this weekend. 4th place man, Ollie Berman, the man of the race for a lot of people. You got the driver of the day, got my driver of the day vote as well. From 9th to 4th, he got a really good start, made up 3 places, got himself up into P6, and there he took advantage of the Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen battle, like I said, passed George Russell as well in that, and then got up into 4th place. And then obviously after Lewis Hamilton pit and his penalty, that was a net 3rd, and it looked like at one point a podium was on, because I mean he wasn't very far ahead of Max Verstappen when all that happened, just a couple of seconds, but they managed to build that gap up to about 3 or 4 seconds, which I was really surprised about, to be honest with you. I didn't quite expect that to happen. Obviously Max went really long, Berman pit earlier than that, and then built up a bit more of a gap on Max Verstappen, and the pace of the Haas was actually really good, and Ollie Berman took absolutely the most of that. Then pit for the final time, and that came out in 4th place, but he held on really well once Oscar Piastri was hunting him down on the end for a career best 4th place. These kind of performances have looked like they've been on for Ollie Berman, but not quite clicked. But this time it all came together for him, and a brilliant P4, nothing but a 10 out of 10 for me. 5th place man, Oscar Piastri, and this has been a bad weekend again for him. Qualified in 8th, obviously got the benefit of Carlos Sainz's penalty, which pushed him up to 7th. But even with that, he got a bad start, was down to 11th place, but by the end of lap 1 he made up a couple of places. Thankfully him got him up to 9th, but then he was stuck behind Yuki Tsunoda for far too long. Once he finally made his way past him, it was then that we started making inroads on the guys ahead. He had good race pace, but it's just a really bad qualifying because it has just cost him. Got a nice pass on Kimi Antonelli at the end, was hunting down Ollie Berman, and then he missed out on the chance to pass Ollie Berman on that last lap because he was right in there within the DRS zone, and was less than half a second behind Ollie when that happened, and it looked like he would have been there to make that pass had the DRS been allowed and no VSC, and that would have meant he would have just held on to his championship lead. But as it happens, he's now 1 point behind, and he's just gone on a run where he was on the podium 15 of the first 16 races. And then now for the last 3-4 races now he's not had a single podium, which is bizarre actually, how his form has just really plummeted. I'm just not sure where it's gone. Needs to just give his head a little bit of a wobble, just remember what he is and what he's become. But he's just said he's finding it really difficult with this car now. And the strange thing about that is, though, that they've not bought any upgrades to this car. It's the car that they've had all season, no upgrades for a long time, and now he's sort of saying that I need to learn to drive this differently. As I did that as the weekend went on, the car performed better. What's gone wrong? Sabotage, some say. I very highly doubt that, but obviously the golden boy at McLaren clearly is Lando Norris, and now he leads the championship. Can Oscar fight his way back? Last time out, he goes to Brazil, and last time out in Brazil, he actually did really well there. Obviously, the race didn't go too well for him, but the sprint, he looked like he was, drove a brilliant race, and he gave that lead to Lando Norris because he was fighting for the championship that time around. There'll be no such thing if anything like that is to happen this next time out, but for Oscar, he really needs to just arrest this downward spiral. No podium again, finished in 5th place, and that meant he lost a 14-point lead to his teammate. He's just losing big points every weekend for the last few weekends, and he'd be just sweating he doesn't finish behind Max Verstappen the way things are going. But I've given him a 4 out of 10 for this weekend. 6th place man, Kimi Antonelli, started there, finished there in the end. He was had a decent race up to P5. Like I said, got past George Russell when Hamilton and Verstappen were battling. Verstappen came back on track, blocked George Russell, who was also going off track for one part of the corners as well. Meant that Kimi Antonelli got up and inside. Didn't quite have the pace from there on afterwards though, and then held up George Russell for about 4 or 5 laps. He was questioning later on after the race actually whether that was actually the right decision from the team, because maybe he was just getting more damage in the dirty air behind his teammate on his tyres. Eventually got passed by Piastri, and then George Russell let him pass back into his 6th place. The first half of the race was good, the second half not so good. Some decent points though for him and the Mercedes outfit. I've given him a 6 out of 10 though. 7th place man, George Russell, started 4th, finished 7th in the end. And he just had a frustrating race, hasn't he? He was just angry pretty much all the way through that radio, on any of the radio calls throughout all that race, from the very start, obviously with the 2 guys cutting the first corner, and then obviously with the Verstappen Hamilton, and then he's been stuck behind Kimi Antonelli as well and having to wait 5 laps, and then he felt that by that time he'd actually been allowed Antonelli to let him past, he'd lost the best of his tyres and didn't quite have the pace then actually to close up to Ollie Berman, because once Antonelli did let him past, he wasn't catching Ollie at all, and then dropped back into the grasps of Oscar Piastri, and once that happened he let Antonelli past. He was in the races, fantastic for us to watch, probably just not a great drive for George Russell though. He would have beaten his teammate, obviously the team orders came in there and helped him out with the first part, and rightly so, he gave that place back. But again, not fantastic from George Russell, so I've given him a 6 out of 10. 8th place man, Lewis Hamilton, and a really good qualifying session for him to get him up to start into P3. The race started well for him. He was up alongside on the inside of Charles Leclerc, and going into turn 1 he was actually ahead and would have seen him come out 2nd place. Obviously Leclerc cut the corner on that, and he did ask actually the team about what's happening with all the investigations about this turn 1 corner cutting and all that sort of stuff, but it was the team really obviously didn't want to dwell on that too much because it would have meant Leclerc getting a penalty. I can understand that. And then he was the battle with Max Verstappen, I think he probably did the right thing. He probably should have backed off a little bit though, because it did look like he gained about a second, but to get a 10-second penalty was really, really harsh. And then after that sort of happened, it seemed like he just went on a bit of a downhill, lost his momentum, lost his mojo a little bit in the race, because the first part of the race, a bit like Kimi Antonelli, was actually really, really good. Looked like a podium was potentially on for him, but the 10-second penalty came, and even after that he just didn't quite have the pace to then catch up and get in the fights ahead of him, which is probably a little bit disappointing from him, because the Ferrari did actually look good around here. Difficult one to judge, but without that 10-second penalty, I think was harsh, he would have had a really good race. So I've given him a 7 out of 10. 9th place man Esteban Ocon, and it rounds off a double points finish for the Haas team, which moved them up into 8th place, 2 points ahead of the Sauber. Ocon though had a decent race, a good start that got him up into 10th place, and then he was stuck behind Yuki Tsunoda for an awfully long time. But then obviously helped with an undercut from the team on strategy, and then also Yuki's really long stop, which then meant he got up into 9th place, and a decent actually race weekend. Nothing spectacular, because once he got past Yuki he didn't really have the pace to close up on Lewis Hamilton after that. But when you look at that, a double points finish from the Haas team, the way they've been racing, it actually was a really good weekend from the pair of the two Haas drivers, and for Ocon as well. I thought it was a pretty solid weekend. Obviously it just doesn't help when your teammate has done something spectacular and brought home 4th place for the team, but a great weekend overall. I've given him an 8 out of 10. 10th place man Gabriel Bortoleto started in 16th, made up 6 places into P10, and a point is actually a really good result for him. Qualifying didn't go so well, but it meant that he had to just rely on the team. He got a good start, he had a good strategy, and that helped him then, and then finally with some overtaking on track, and he had a brilliant move on lap 63 with Isaac Hadjar, which is probably one of the moves of the Grand Prix, which got him that final singular point. So turned out and turned around what was a difficult qualifying into a strong point finish for the Sauber. And looking at how their battle is now with Haas up ahead of them, they'll be needing both drivers now to pull off decent results, and I think Gabriel Bortoleto can be pretty happy with this one. I think that's a pretty solid job. I've given him a 9 out of 10. 11th place man Yuki Tsunoda started in 10th, got a decent start. He was in 9th place, but then it was that really long stop where the team just 10 seconds changing a tyre. We don't really see that from Red Bull. He just sort of came out and just said, this is racing, these kind of things happen. What else can you say when the team openly admitted that they cost him some points? In the race he was actually doing really well up until that point. Even the team kind of happy with the way his race pace was. He was not far off the pace of Max Verstappen when it came to the race. Once I've looked at it back, but I was actually disappointed to see that he'd finished out the race. I didn't actually look and realise how bad his pit stop was when I did the 3 good and the 3 bad in my race review. So I was probably a little bit harsh on Yuki, but still not a spectacular weekend when you've still finished 11th. I know it wasn't really in his hands, but the decision now has been delayed about the second Red Bull seat. So is there a chance that we might see Yuki in that seat next season? Personally, I think it'd be great if we did see that. Another season for Isaac Hadjar in the Red Bull Racing Bulls V-Carb outfit won't do him any harm, and Yuki to give him a fair shake in this car, which for the last few seasons has been kind of tailored towards Max Verstappen in this ground effect era, and we're going to go into completely new regulations, and he could be the one that gets a lot closer than we've seen anybody else get to Max Verstappen. Let's see what happens with that one, but disappointing the way it ended for Yuki Tsunoda. I've given him a 6 out of 10. 12th place man Alex Albon, and a horrible qualifying session meant he started 17th. He also started on the hard tyres, which was absolutely the wrong call. He was only one of 2 drivers to do that. And that just meant he was stuck then really effectively with just a one-stop strategy and didn't really have any options then in the race to sort of switch that up, because you've committed to the hard unless you just go soft at that point, and it just wasn't a strategy option really. And again, it's something that they would have committed to earlier with the way they used their soft tyres for qualifying. But yeah, difficult race weekend. He wasn't happy with the strategy call, and it just, yeah, nothing really quite went right for him, and it was a bad qualifying which just set up a difficult race. I've given him a 4 out of 10. 13th place man Isaac Hadjar started in 8th place. He had a good start actually, but then made a mistake. I think it was at turn 6 on lap 1, which cost him a couple of positions. But then he made his way back up into P10 in the race. But in terms of strategy and tyre options, he only had used softs to go on at the end, and he felt like that was the difference that cost him potentially holding on to that final point when he got passed by Gabriel Bortoleto right at the end. Yeah, difficult. I think it's disappointing when you started 8th and finished 13th, 5 places down. But when the strategy falls the way it did, he just pit a little bit too early for that softs. And obviously he was using scrub softs as well. It just made it a little bit harder than it did. But it was a really good qualifying session, but not such a great race for him in the end. I've given him a 6 out of 10. 14th place man Lance Stroll, and it's another poor weekend. A poor qualifying session starting in 19th. He had the spin on lap 1. And then just last and up at the back, then made his way up to P14, but obviously helped. He's got 4 DNFs in front of him, and he's beaten he's beaten the Alpine guys who, the way their car is, he should be beating. Another disappointing race from Lance Stroll, and it's kind of what we've just come to expect. A 3 out of 10 for me. 15th place man Pierre Gasly, and what can you say? Started in 18th, had a good start, made a pass on Fernando Alonso, but only held on to that for a couple of laps. And then pit early, and probably a little bit too early on the softs, which just made his second stint really slow. I think they were always going to struggle around here, and he's beaten just his teammate who's kind of followed him home. Yeah, nothing spectacular this weekend. It was always going to be a tough one for the Alpines. I've given it a 5 out of 10. 16th place man Franco Colapinto, and he, like Alex Albon, were the only 2 drivers on the whole grid to start on the hards. And that was the wrong choice. His pace was a little bit better when he got onto the softs, but in the end he pit early enough again, and it was just a real struggle for him. He's been beaten by his teammate, but he's actually done a pretty solid job over the last couple of races. He's followed him home. In the end, he was only a couple of seconds behind Pierre Gasly at the end of this race. And he's actually been performing pretty well in a pretty much of a dog of a car for the last 3 or 4 races. I know sometimes the ratings don't quite sort of understand that sometimes, and it's hard to understand actually how bad is this car or how bad are the drivers doing. But has he done enough to keep this seat? We'll soon find out, but I've given him a 4 out of 10 for this weekend. On to the DNFs, and the first of them was Liam Lawson. We've got 4 DNFs in this race, and we don't see that too often, but Liam DNF'd on lap 9. It's been a difficult weekend for him then. We had a bad qualifying session in P15. The race didn't go too well. He got that damage on lap 1 with Carlos Sainz. Wasn't really his fault. He pit though, came out, and then he got the scare, didn't he, with the marshals running right across his path. The FIA investigating that, but it was a difficult weekend for him, and the race lasted just 9 laps. No rating for me. The next DNF was Nico Hülkenberg on lap 25, and I'm surprised he made it that far into the race actually, because he was on the radio saying he's got power unit issues on the formation lap, and then went into the pits lap 25, and then it just didn't keep going from there. There was battery issues throughout that race, and he had a decent enough qualifying session in P13, but the race, driving around with power unit issues from formation lap, there's not an awful lot you can expect, and probably just glad to get 25 laps in somehow. no rating for me. Fernando Alonso, he retired on lap 35, had a brake issue in the end. It was a difficult weekend for the Aston Martin outfit. They don't historically go well around Mexico, and this season was no different again. Fernando wasn't doing particularly great in the race when it happened, and then called in to retire for safety issues, just to be safe really, but because of the braking issues. No rating again for me for him. And the last of the DNFs, Carlos Sainz on lap 70. He had an eventful race, started in 12th, so not the best qualifying session, but there was a chance for points. But then he had damage on lap 1 with his incident with Liam Lawson, probably his fault. Went to cut the grass, but didn't realise Liam was doing the same thing. Then got some damage to his rim on the tyre after that incident, which meant he had vibrations throughout that first stint. It also meant, though, that he had issues with the sensor for the pit lane limiters. Why he had 2 pit lane speeding in the pit lane infringements. You got a 5-second penalty for the first, and then a drive through for the second. It was almost like the stewards were just sort of teasing him on that one, weren't they? With, he's got some sort of issue, and it doesn't really ever happen twice in a race that you get some issue like that. But unless there's an issue, or you don't get twice, you get speeding in the penalties unless there's an issue. But other than that, it was not a great weekend for him really at all. Despite that, they were still in a fight for some points, which shows that there was some performance in the car, but it just didn't come to any good really for him. And then he caused that VSC on the very last lap, and there should be no criticism falling on the shoulders of Carlos Sainz for that one, though, because he parked it absolutely brilliantly well out the way, and only the race director can explain why he called the VSC and why it couldn't have just been dealt with under double wave yellows as it had done when the leaders went through not long after it happened. He was well out the way and safe, unless they were just worried about what happened on lap 3 with the Liam Lawson and a steward on track, and they were just sort of playing it extra cautious because of the mistake that already went on, but clearly wasn't needed, and not really Carlos Sainz's fault, but I've given him a 5 out of 10 for this weekend. On to my predictions, and well, I don't think it's been a good one again at all. Just 2 out of 8 decisions right. For the qualifying, I had Max Verstappen to take pole position, but it was a brilliant lap from Lando Norris. I had Norris in second, obviously he took pole. It was Charles Leclerc, and I had Charles Leclerc for third, but it was Lewis Hamilton in third place, and it was really good to see Lewis Hamilton that high up the grid, and it thought then it might be a promising race for him. It's a shame it ended the way it did for Lewis the race. In the race, though, I had Lando Norris to take the win, Max Verstappen second, and Oscar Piastri third. It was a great win for Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc held on for second place from Max Verstappen, who came home in third. There was no podium again for Oscar Piastri, and that's it. That's the final predictions and driver ratings done. Let me know your thoughts. Who did you have as your driver of the day? Any agreements or disagreements on my ratings? Let me know in the comments below. And we head to Brazil next. It's a sprint race, the final 4 races. Who have you got as your favourite now for the title? Lando Norris seems like he's hitting form at absolutely the right time. Oscar Piastri has lost his way in the final 4 Grand Prix with no podium, and absolutely shocking results. Can he arrest that slide? Last time out, though, he did go really well in Brazil, but for obviously the crazy qualifying session with the way that happened. But his sprint was good, so he knows he can go well around there, and he has got the beat him, Lando Norris. Well, he did on sprint day anyway last time in Brazil, so I'll be hoping that he can have that sort of change in fortunes and he can jump ahead again in the championship, but let's see. It's just been a shocker for him. Lando Norris now in the lead. Has he got the nerve to hold on for this first championship? I mean, it looks ever tight. Max Verstappen is still there, sniffing away in the background, 36 points behind Lando Norris, and if he can win the sprint and the race, and that's 10 points in the lead, and he's only just 26 behind with 3 to go. and it'd be anyone's call from there on, to be honest with you. But let me know who's your favourite for the championship. It's hotting up now. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you on the next one.